Now, how many of you have a story about a cowboy builder, or a cowboy plumber, or cowboy electrician, or gas man, or frankly, any other rogue tradesperson? Clearly enough of us have coined that term, cowboy builder. But have you ever considered that you might be part of the problem? Because tradespeople are now starting groups online, huge groups. One of them on Facebook has 250,000 people to call out cowboy customers, those of us who don't pay or move the goalposts, or who, frankly, are just nightmares to deal with. How big a problem is it? I'm joined by Hattie Hassan, who's CEO of the, frankly, marvellously named Stopcocks Women Plumbers, and Rico Wojtulewicz, Head of Policy and Market Insight at the National Federation of Builders. Hattie, Rico, good morning.
Good morning.
Just start with you, Hattie. Have you ever had problems with cowboy customers?
Yes, I have. Unfortunately, I have. I mean, tradespeople are quite at risk because we often are the ones where we have to take some risk ourselves financially. So we're laying out money before we have delivered a service. And so we're in a very vulnerable position if a customer turns around and turns rogue, as I like to say, and decides that they're not going to be happy with what you've done, even though they haven't given you indications of that during the work.
And are these people who are, you think, just taking you for a ride from the very start? Or are they people who are genuinely annoyed at the job that you think you've done to the best of your ability, but they take issue with?
Well, I do believe that in this thing that happened to me, I believe that this person was a rogue. I can definitely see how things can turn funny. One of the ways to protect yourself from that is to make sure that you always keep the customers informed about what's happening, because you never know, particularly my job, you never know what's underneath floorboards. So you'll pick up some floorboards and you might think it's going to be quite simple. The customer might think it's a small job, but when you actually get in there and you realise it's not such a small job, and you have to inform the customer. Now, they're not necessarily going to turn rogue. But this particular person, in my case, I believe they were rogue in the first place.
Did you get the money back in this instance?
No.
How much did you lose out?
Well, it wasn't a ton of money that I lost, but what I did lose was the fact that I tried to get my small amount of money, and they tried to then counter-sue me for 10 times that amount. So what it meant was a 9-month, basically a 9-month battle against with intermediaries and what have you. But I had done all those things that I recommend to do, which is keep the customer informed, have everything in writing, and I've done all of that. But that still didn't protect me from that 9 months of hell, and that having to, because we live on our reputation. So if somebody ruins that reputation, it doesn't only ruin that job for you, but it could ruin your future. I was operating on word of mouth, and most tradespeople do. So it was awful. It was so hell that I had gone to my GP for. I wasn't sleeping. I was worried that I wasn't. If I had lost the case, which I was fearing I was going to do, I would never be able to afford the money. I would have gone bankrupt. I would have lost my career, lost my job, lost everything really. So in the end, they dropped it 2 days before court.
It was funny when I was setting up this and researching it and speaking to you about it, I sort of sold it to you, and, cowboy builders, cowboy customers, it sounds quite humorous the way we talk about it. And as you rightly pointed out, you can have a fun chat about it if you like, but actually the consequences are so serious. And I think you've laid it out there going to court. Stay where you are, Hattie. I want to bring in Rico Wojtulewicz from the National Federation of Builders. Rico, what governs this sort of relationship between a tradesperson and the customer? How do you go about resolving disputes like this?
It can be very difficult, and there have been calls in the past for improved adjudication processes to make this a bit easier, because obviously consumers need protecting. But there are bad actors out there in all fields of life. And Hattie made a really interesting point there. She lifted a floorboard and found an issue. Well, the people that are the best in the industry, and the majority of clients are brilliant, and the majority of builders are brilliant. But people like Hattie will say, this is the issue, this is what's going to be done, these are the regulations I've got to follow, this is the best way to do the project, the work. And a scrupulous person, a rogue builder, may not do that. And so you clash here because the customer who's rogue will be like, yeah, that's fine, just get on with the job, whatever. Because it's not just about the payment or whatever it might be. It might just be because they just want a job done in a particular way. And then obviously Hattie's going to be paid. They're going to have to have greater challenges to get that project over the line because the costs are going to go up, and that rogue customer may not want to pay that. Maybe didn't want to pay in the first place. So the best companies are the most exposed, and unfortunately you can have your PII, so professional indemnity insurance, and that covers your work, but even that can be a really protracted process to go through any sort of legal claims. So as Hattie said, you can spend months, maybe even years, just feeling as though you've got this sword hung over your head and your business could close at a moment's notice.
And we should reflect, you've reflected it there, Citizens Advice saying today that 700 complaints a week are to do with tradespeople, work in the home. It's the second most complained about thing after vehicle-related issues. Do you think that the sector, both the tradespeople, but also this relationship with customers, trying to make sure that tradespeople are treated fairly as well, is that something that needs more regulation? And how viable is more regulation ultimately? So the best companies don't have this issue. As I said, they'll have that insurance to protect their work. Many companies don't have that. On the smaller jobs, that's something that perhaps isn't always necessary. But if you take Australia, which has a licensing scheme for builders, they still have 29% of work being done by unlicensed contractors. And that's the problem here, is how many layers of bureaucracy do you want on top of on schemes to make sure that everyone's protected? The better approach is to make sure that there is that insurance available and that you have a simpler adjudication so that everyone is protected. The worry here is that the government goes, well, what do we do here? Let's have all these licensing schemes, all these new layers of bureaucracy. X company can only do this sort of work if they've got that license. So Hattie may need somebody to come in and to do some work, even though she's very capable to do it. And you think to yourself, well, what's the best process? Well, it's to have that insurance to protect everybody and the adjudication. That's all we need in this country. But we are so far from that discussion because it's always about cowboy. And that's what we need to get away from. Understand the industry first. And just a final word to Hattie. There seems to be a lack of trust between tradespeople and homeowners, people who contract you to do the work. It's, as we've said, it's not the majority of people. The majority of people on both sides are great and fair. Do you worry about the lack of trust, and how do you overcome that with your customers?
Yeah, I definitely worry about the lack of trust because, that's half of our currency is trust, because people are trusting you to come into their homes and to know what you're talking about and to do a good job and to charge a reasonable price. And you're trusting that once you've done that, you'll get paid. So that's really a difficult thing. And and unfortunately, tradespeople don't have the best reputation. So we basically need to change the reputation of the industry. Now, how do we do that? Do we do that by continuing to have communication lines open all the time? It's more difficult, as Rico said, for a small concern. Most are sole traders. And we make up the vast majority of the industry. So I think somehow reputation needs to be changed overall so that we're not all tarred with the bad brush. And same with customers. Customers shouldn't all be tarred with the bad brush. I've got to say that, in all of my years, this only ever happened to me once or twice. Yeah. And I've served thousands of people.
Well, keep serving us. Thank you so much for coming on, shedding some light. That's Hattie Hassan, the CEO of the marvellously named Stopcock's Women Plumbers, and Rico Wojtulewicz, who's Head of Policy and Market Insight at the National Federation of Builders.